I mean, I did a couple graphics for him even when he rode for Santa Cruz, you know. One of them was a bird, like in outer space, flying around. It was blue, and it was like a bunch of yellow stars. And they have it at NHS, it's hanging up.
You know what I realized is that the board, his San Jose bird series, that the last one of those is probably my favorite of all his board graphics. That's probably the best one I could ever think of, you know, as far as relating a board graphic to the spirit of a person.
We skated on the same skateboard brand together. We just had this idea, dude, let's be rad, you know, Wonder Twins. The boards go together, you know, and I'm one, you're the other. That was it. I just broke them out recently, and I was just like, dude, this is probably one of my favorite, you know, board series ever. It was totally unique. To this day, it's one of my favorite board graphics, if not my favorite.
The way I got set up to do graphics for Tim was I was like a writer and a photographer for Transworld, and so I worked with Tim a lot, and then probably by just being together, you'd see some of my work and be like, oh, you should do a graphic, you know? And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll try, you know, like, and so I don't know, I think I might have done about 5 or 6 of his graphics, I think. It seemed like we had a nice synergy, and he liked the stuff I was doing, so. I think the first graphic I did for him, it was an SMA graphic, and it was like these little creatures, and they're kind of like floating in space, and it was Everslick, and yeah, I think Russ Pope actually has the painting. I mean, like on this board, for instance, actually this probably isn't one of my favorite graphics I ever did, but it is kind of, has an interesting story. This certain amount of time, he was really into, like, he made this sound, he'd go, squaw, squaw! He'd make this really weird sound, like, I don't know, when he was happy, or like, to like communicate with his friend somehow, or with Karina or something, I don't know. So I thought about it, and then I was making these, like, this is like a weird process of, like, kind of taking all these pictures and then like putting it back together and making an image. And but then I was doing that, and then I remember him going squaw, squaw, and then I was like, oh, next one I'm gonna take those images I've been making with like the chickens, and so I wrote I don't know, I wrote all kinds of dumb stuff like plumage, nesting, Tim Brauch, earthworms, branches, all things maybe birds are thinking about, roosting, and then it says, squaw, squaw, squaw. It's probably my favorite one that I ever did for him. It was called the International Convention of Dim-Wittedness or something. Men like in a convention, but they all had like chicken heads. Someone told me that this one was famous or something, I don't know. But this was the SMA one that I did for Tim. I did a series for Ron and Tim and Israel that they all kind of looked the same. At the time, I think we were all kind of like into aliens and thinking about extraterrestrials, and I like knew a person that supposedly got abducted and they were like totally spun out. So then I think I was inspired by that. So I was like, aliens will up. And I don't know. I didn't think that they would do it actually, because it said on it. But when I brought it in, they were like, oh, that's cool. And they just made it. This is a long time ago, man.
Well, if I have the aliens you up one, it's still sitting over the door to one of the rooms in my house.
Yeah, like 93, so that's like 15 years ago, yeah? That's a long time ago.
This was the first board I did for Tim, and I think it was actually his first graphic when he was on SMA. And I remember we had a discussion about pop art and different styles of art, and we kind of
narrowed it down to pop art, and then Andy Warhol came up, and this is kind of our take on the whole Andy Warhol thing, you know. And we decided to, you know, take an everyday object and make it into art. So I took a photo of a toilet there at the office and just Xeroxed it and colored some of them, and you know, kind of in the Andy Warhol style. And I think it also, you know, says something about it's kind of an anti-celebrity thing, because to me, Andy Warhol was all about celebrities, and he would do a bunch of Marilyn Monroes or something, and this just kind of takes the piss out of it, you know. It's just like a toilet. I thought a toilet was a punk rock take on it, I guess. So obviously Tim was into different kinds of art. You know, first time I worked with him, he was talking about pop artists, and this was when we were doing slick bottoms, so we could do, you know, more of a photographic thing than a heavy cartoon image. This board, I think, was the follow-up to the toilet one. It probably was his second board, second or third, and I'm not sure. I think Tim was out of the country and we needed to do a graphic for him. So this is something I came up with, and he dug it, so we called it Acid Trip. Kind of some more pop art imagery in there, references to cartoon characters and, you know, sort of goofy grape here or whatever, I don't know. So anyway, this was definitely the early 90s, because we were trying like all kinds of weird styles, and this was definitely an experiment. But this board, this one Tim was really involved in, because he was really into pinball, and he wanted to have something that combined you know, his love of pinball and sort of a comic book art look to it. And so he came in with this whole concept, and we sketched it up, and he wanted this really futuristic kind of cyborg pinball guy that's just like, the guy is becoming the pinball machine. All right, so this is what I came up with. And this is the original art, which I still have. Some of the colors are maybe brighter. You can see how it changed when we printed it, but this was my take on kind of the comic book art style. But I always think this was really, you know, Tim's idea, and I was stoked to work on it with him. Okay, we can talk about this one. Now here's a piece of art that I have that was for a deck for Tim, and I don't know, it was pretty rare, because I never got one of these boards, and I don't think they were around too long. This was like during the phase where we were like putting out a new board every other week. But I remember he was at NHS, and he saw somebody's t-shirt, kind of Japanese writing and some spacemen on it. And Tim wanted to do something with that flavor, so this is what I came up with, and it kind of has, once again, a comic book look to it, kind of a Jack Kirby style characters, and tried to make the lettering have a little bit of a Japanese look to it, and I always liked this one. I wish I had one of the boards. So this is another graphic I did for Tim that is totally Tim. One of the other things he was really into was the Twilight Zone. And besides pinball, I think actually his favorite pinball machine was the Twilight Zone pinball machine. But he brought in a book he had, a really nice coffee table book about the Twilight Zone. And we ended up just Xeroxing some of the images out of there and putting this graphic together. So I hope people understood what it was about. I mean, if you knew the Twilight Zone, you'd get it. But we made the photos kind of have like an old-fashioned TV screen look to them, because they have this this weird line effect looks like you're watching a black and white television. Now I think that Russ Pope was the team manager for SMA when Tim was writing, right? Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah. One thing I noticed when working with Tim was that he would sometimes bring me stuff that he found at thrift stores. So he must have spent a lot of time going to thrift stores. And he came in with some of these pictures that he found that he liked, and I don't know, I call them big-eyed girls. They're just kind of thrift store, you know, cheesy pictures you find. So we got the idea from these to try and make a graphic out of one. So the first one we did, you can see, we just took a photo of this this image that he brought in. There's the graphic. And then we did a follow-up one that I drew, and that, you know, I kind of used this other picture and changed it around and put his name in there, like she's holding his name. And I don't know, I really like those. Not sure if people really got it, but the whole thrift store thing, but Tim was stoked on these, so yeah, it was fun to do. This was part of an early SMA series that I think when Russ Pope was the team manager, came up with the idea of doing these little Fisher-Price little people. So someone got a package of these little characters, and each guy picked a character, and Tim got the fireman. But there was like a Ron Whaley and a Israel Forbes character, and so forth. So you kind of need to see all the boards together to get the effect, but I always thought it was cool that Tim got to be the fireman. Now this was an idea Tim had, and he wanted to have a Captain Morgan's graphic, and basically without just kind of ripping off the logo and, you know, getting in a lawsuit or anything, we took the Captain Morgan character and put him on a pirate ship, and they're sailing in a sea of rum with ice cubes. So it's not quite as blatant of the Captain Morgan's, you know, rip-off or whatever, but that was the idea behind it. Yo ho ho. The ones I like, other people don't necessarily like, and then other people will come up and tell me, that's my favorite board, and it's the one that I can't even look at, you know. So for a while there, he was interested in animals attacking people. Later, we did one that I don't have, but it has like a bear attacking a hunter or something. And he had brought in a bunch of pictures from a hunting magazine where animals were attacking people. And I think it was around the time they had those videos that came out where deer were like clobbering people, and he was really into that. So this was like the scuba diver getting attacked, trying to get to the surface. You know, I like the colors on this one. Now this graphic was probably one of my favorite that I did for Tim. I just like the way it came out, and I really enjoyed making these tires so big. But he wanted a monster truck, so this is what I came up with. It's kind of a demo derby kind of monster truck thing. You know, a lot of this stuff was just hand-drawn with ink. Like, for instance, here's some of the original art. And, you know, it's pretty much a pen and ink drawing. And we'd go back and make separate color layers for the silk screeners. Here's another one that I still have, the octopus one. So anything that was on the black layer is all drawn by hand. The other colors are added. Actually, this is before we were doing them on a computer, so we were actually cutting films. So it's pretty old school. I was at NHS from 88 to 99, so about 11 years. Probably did over 100 boards. I've done some art shows, you know, done some exhibits. I think I put like 85 boards up once. My personal collection of boards I did, I'm not selling, you know, that stuff's just my collection. I do paint boards, you know, hand paint boards and do shows with that kind of stuff and sell pieces. Tim was very easygoing, friendly. When it came to skating, he was fast. That's something I really appreciated. Here's to beans.